What is it like to have the terrain in your own backyard? How does it actually feel to have one of the big events just around the corner? Hello and welcome to the Ultra Running Podcast with me, Coach Marshy. Welcome back. For me personally, since the last show with Ree, the training has continued, and I've also entered a bit of a cross-training event as well, which I'll talk about on my other YouTube channel. But as far as I'm concerned, running is now back on and working for me once again personally. So we'll talk about that in a second, the whole terrain and it being in your own backyard. But let's welcome today's guest. So welcome to the show, Heidi. How are you, Heidi?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So before we get into it, let's ask you a really simple question. What does running mean to you?
I don't know if that is simple. Wow, a lot more than I ever thought it would do. I think it's gone from not even enjoying running a few years ago, I actually used to hate it, to now I don't think I could cope without it. So a lot.
Yeah, and that whole thing about like this idea that something that a few years ago wasn't part of your life, but
Yeah.
now you can't imagine life without it. Does that make you realize that there are things out there that people should try more often?
Yeah, definitely.
And would you say that running's one of those things?
Always.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. So before we dig into what I just said in that intro there, who are you? Where you from? How did you get into running? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, I'm Heidi. Only really started running in the last few years. Used to live out in the Wirral near Liverpool, and now live in UK in Cornwall. Ran my first marathon. I think it was in end of 2019 now, and then yeah, it's kind of kind of grown from there.
Yeah, no, cool. And when you started running, how did you start? Did you just sort of go conventional and sort of do the whole couch to 5K thing, or?
Used to do a couple of like the little fun runs, like splash dash, things like that. And we used to have one in Liverpool, the Scouts 5K. Used to do them. Would probably be hungover on a Sunday. My mum would drag me around, and that was about my limit. Then after that, I was like, oh, maybe I'll start doing a little bit more. People were like, you're actually quite a good runner. And I was like, no, I hate it. Don't like it. It's not my thing. I started to just go to park run a little bit, and then was actually like, oh, this is quite enjoyable. And then I think that's when you start getting competitive, because you keep getting your time each week. I was like, oh, well, actually, I'm getting better and better every time I go. And then I
Yeah.
think there, oh, well, maybe I'll try a half marathon. Hated that. And then decided randomly that I just thought I'd sign up for the London Marathon. I think that, yeah, that's when it that's when it happened.
So what year was London that you did when you signed up?
Ended up doing, I think, end of 2019. I signed up in the January, hoping to run it in the April. Got a charity place, and then obviously it got cancelled because of COVID.
Yeah. So did you run that in October 21 eventually?
Eventually, yeah. Did the
Yeah.
London Marathon as my first marathon, and then yeah, got to run it actually.
Yeah, no, cool. So yeah, going back to that competitive bit that you mentioned, like you realized that your park run times are improving. Was that inner competition, like with yourself, that you realized that things were changing?
Yeah, and I am very competitive, but with myself, not against anyone else. Just yeah, definitely always against me.
And is that something that you've had all of your life, or is that just sort of in adult life?
I don't know. I've only ever really done horse riding, things like that. We used to do quite well. We'd go to shows and stuff, but I don't think I've ever been as competitive as I am now in running.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, no, running does bring out the inner monster, right?
Yeah.
Um and with that sort of progress from, say, going to your sort of your your 5K with your mum when you're hungover on a Sunday to, you know, going up to the London Marathon. What kind of time span was that for you in terms of like the actual time, given obviously COVID was in there as well, but you know, what was the sort of journey?
I think probably only about a couple of years or so. The like first little fun ones would be like every now and then, every few months, quite random. And then I decided to sign up to a half marathon. Can't remember what year, must have been probably 2018 now. But then after that, didn't really run again until like that next January 2019. I think, or maybe just before, was probably when I started running more often, and then was like, right, I'm just gonna go for it and train for a marathon.
No, brilliant. And how was London? I was there that year as well. I'd done it before, so I'd seen it without the COVID restrictions, and then that October 21 for me, it felt quite strange. But the people that I knew that had done it first time said they felt like it was London Marathon. How did it feel to you?
Yeah, so that was obviously the first time I've ever experienced it at all, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. What was the best part for you?
Seeing how different London is if you go time, and that like obviously I'm from like Liverpool and everyone will speak to everyone, but if you go to London any other time, no one speaks to anyone, and like seeing the amount of people that would like the whole way around the course. Yeah, like everyone mentions how good the support is, but I think until you run it, like that just absolutely keeps you going around the whole way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I'd always say, particularly at about mile 23, I always remember that sort of when you cross back over, going the other way from Tower Bridge and you've come back round, it just feels really intense there. The crowd like is really, but like in a good way. And I don't know if you felt that in that particular point, but yeah, no, I agree that the crowds are definitely something that are huge. So let's go beyond that. Let's go to the next part of the running journey. You know, people talk about running age, right? So you've done your London Marathon, and we're talking now because you clearly are in the ultra running space. But how do we get to the point where you say, right, London's done, and now I'm going to do an ultra marathon? Because a lot of people ask me that, but I'm not even sure I know how I did it. So it'd be interesting to know if you know what happened and what the mechanisms were in your brain or what you thought about to get you there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just looked at the dates actually because I was like, when did I run my first ultra? Which wasn't it was, but it wasn't a full ultra, and it was actually only my third marathon. So I'd done the London Marathon, like the virtual, as my first one. And then I just looked at that, and my second marathon was just a training run. And then I did Race to the Castle, 50K, which wasn't 50K. And that was literally my first ultra. I think running that was then like, okay, this is actually quite fun. I'd like to do more of this.
Yeah. And did you do that where you do it in one, or did you do the camp halfway thing?
I just did the second day. So yeah, just all one 50K.
Right. Okay. Cool. And obviously that race, probably a lot of people listening, you know, even the guys that are sort of getting into ultra running that have listened to this will have seen that. You can't avoid that series of races really once you come into the ultra space. Was it hard in terms of the terrain and the elevation, or was it okay?
No, it was actually okay. There was a few little hilly sections, but I think overall it was actually quite flat. Um, yeah, it was quite an easier one to start on, I think.
Do you think you'll do any of their other series or not?
I don't know. I've done Race to the Stones, but I don't think I would do any of the others again.
Yeah. I was meant to do Race to the Stones in the COVID year. I was entered and ready to go, and then obviously, like everything else, it got cancelled that year. So, but yeah, I think once you do that first, so 50K, right? So you've done your 50K, and you obviously enjoyed yourself. I don't think we'd be sitting here now. I don't think we'd be friends on Instagram. I don't think we'd have met. We met, by the way, for anyone listening. We have met in person. I always like to make that clear whether I have or haven't met our guest. But we met in person at UTS at the finish line. I think was the first time we met, wasn't it?
I think I actually saw you halfway round it.
Oh
Then,
yeah, no, sorry, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. In fact, that video will be out on YouTube very soon. I've done like an interview section with everyone. Um and like it's got a few interviews, and I think you're on the halfway because you spill your water on me. So yeah. So but no, so we did meet at UTS, but so that 50K, you've done that. And then you obviously must realize sort of the time and effort that's going to go into an ultra. And you talk back there at the beginning of your running journey, not always enjoying running. So how did you then, what was the process, what started to change? Did you just find yourself out for longer, or was it something that you thought, I just want to put more time into?
yeah, I think I started to enjoy it more. Annoyingly, when I first ran Race to the Castle, I was actually injured. I think I'd obviously at the start just not gone into it very well. Decided that I wanted to start trying to run ultras, but kept getting hip problems, things like that. So when I ran that, I was actually worried I wasn't going to finish it, but did finish it. And then I think that's when it kind of like set it off to want to run more and get into it properly.
Yeah. And what did you do next then after that? What we obviously met at UTS in 2022, and we're going to talk about 2022 in a bit more depth in a second. But was there anything between when we met at UTS last year and when you did that 50K other than Race to the Stones?
So the 50K was in I want to say maybe May or June. And then my next one after that wasn't a race, but I just ran with Nick Butter, who was doing his run around Britain. And it just so happened that it was on my day off. I was wanting to run with him anyway, but it just so happened that it was on my day off from work, running from the Wirral, and he was heading in towards Wales. And I was like, oh, I'll go and run a few miles. Was hoping to run about 20. Was feeling fine, so I said, right, I'll just carry on. We then decided I needed to get my full 50K in because my race wasn't actually 50K. So
Yeah.
got that. That was only like what, my fourth marathon, I think it was. First full 50K, was still feeling fine, really nice, easy pace. So then I was like, okay, fine, I'll carry on, see how I feel, and wherever there's a train station is where I'll head back. So then I can get the train back home. Well, I ended up doing the whole day with him and ran 47 miles. And then that's when I was like, okay, this is for me.
That's an awesome story. And have you asked? Do you still speak to? You keep in contact with him?
Yeah.
And what does he know? Does he know that that's kind of what triggered it and got you into it?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, no, good. I think that's a really cool story, actually. Like mine, for example, everyone's got the unique story, but I would say mine's like just conventional. Did the marathon and then thought, oh, let's go a bit further. But actually, to get into it because I don't know, from what you've told me, I'd say that's a bit like you've stumbled across it a bit because you wanted to join in with this guy, and then look what happened.
Yeah, I think probably from seeing his stories, I think has obviously like set something off. I read his book, things like that. So yeah, I think there must have been like some little interest there, but I think you probably think you can never actually run that far. And then I think running 47 miles, not expecting to ever be able to run that far. And I think at that point I was like, yeah, not expecting to be able to run that far at all, to go from running a 50K that I didn't think I'd maybe finish at all, to then like finding that really easy to run 47 miles. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good story. I like that. That's really cool. It's a really cool story, and something that you don't get by following someone on Instagram necessarily. So, you know, that's really cool. So 2022. Anyone who might be listening to this that follows Heidi may have picked up on this, but from where I'm sitting, it looked like 2022 was quite a big year, which has kind of then filtered into 2023 and kicked you off really well. But I want to particularly focus on November 2022. If you could tell us a little bit about what you got up to and why you were doing it and what it was all about, it'd be great to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So yeah, pretty much ran all of my big races last year. Um, Pretty much all of my like firsts for every distance were last year. And just before November, so about 5-6 weeks before, maybe a little bit just before, I saw Lewis advertising that he was going to be organising a 250k because his Ultra X race in Mexico had been cancelled. I thought I'd probably maybe want to run a multi-day ultra at some point this year instead, or maybe even later. And I just thought I'll sign up to it and I'll see if I get accepted, because then it turned out he had loads of people apply. And I got accepted as one of the people. It ended up being like 17 runners to run 250k, about 50k a day for 5 days, and also raise money for the charity called Big Moose.
What do they do?
They are a mental health charity in Wales, and they also help a lot with like homelessness and things. So yeah, Lewis had started raising money for them, and then we'd obviously got to find out a lot more about them from being at that ultra, from being at that event. And then yeah, since I've then wanted to sort of raise more money and do more stuff for them, and then I did my 27 marathons for them as well, just to try and help raise more money.
Yeah, no, we'll get onto that in a second as well. So that 250k then, you say over 5 days, right?
Yes.
How did you feel physically doing that? You know, the idea that you've run that, then you've got, all right, okay, you run that, you then get to go and relax and refuel and whatever. But what kind of toll did it take on your body?
Yeah, I thought that I'd really struggle because I'd never done anything like that before. Yeah, I'd done like back-to-back long runs for ultra training, maybe like Saturday and Sunday, but nothing to that extent. And obviously some of our days were actually quite hilly. I thought day 4 was going to be when I would really struggle. But it was actually on day 3 I just started to get like, you get sort of a couple of little niggles, and if you've seen the pictures on most of the last few days, I'm just covered in tape, which probably isn't the best thing. But yeah, day 3 I think just really hit me because I think I was having a sore knee at the time, and I just felt like I wasn't running properly, and then me being me, were just getting annoyed at myself. Had a little bit of a breakdown on the canal that day because we were running 3 loops a day. I think that also got to a bit as well, especially being on the canal. Had a little bit of a cry on that day, but then like day 4, day 5, I felt absolutely fine. I mean, on day 5, I was still in a lot of pain. Thought I possibly had a stress fracture. But yeah, like the difference in how you actually feel across those days. There's a lot of emotions going on.
Yeah, and from what we saw on social media, those of us that were following it, it looked well supported by, I'm assuming, family and friends of the 17 runners and possibly the charity. But yeah, tell us a bit more about that. Was there a bit of support along the way?
Yeah, so the way we did it was we were all based at the camp. Um, that would be obviously where we would start and finish every day. But then at the end of each loop, we would come back to camp. So that's where we would be able to like fill up all our backpacks, fill up some snacks, fill up water, and then had the physios and things there. And yeah, like the amount of people that came to support each day, there was always people waiting there for you after like every lap you'd done, and every time someone finished, there was always someone there at the finish line.
That's wicked. And what part of the world was it in?
So that was just outside Bath and Bradford-on-Avon.
Right. Yeah. So mixed terrain, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, cool. And I assume, did everyone finish?
Most of us, yeah, a couple that didn't, I think just through like injuries and stuff. But yeah, a lot of us finished who probably shouldn't have finished really. I think quite a
Why
lot.
is that? Do you feel that you didn't do enough training for it?
I think a lot of us were advised we shouldn't have carried on the last day when we still did. We had about 5 weeks to train in total, which I'm sure everyone knows is not enough time anyway. Yeah, and I think maybe like strength training for me, I know is definitely not a strong point, so that's probably affect it a little bit. But yeah, being told on the last day that you probably shouldn't really go out because you might have a stress fracture, but wanting to still go because you want to finish it and what you want to set out for what you've started, especially when you're raising money as well for a charity.
Yeah, I mean, runners are a weird bunch, but ultra runners are even weirder, right? We're gonna like push through all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So 17 runners, 5 days. What kind of impact did you feel after that event in terms of the recovery? Did it take a long time? Did you feel like almost rather than physical fatigue, like that central fatigue as well, or were you all right?
Yeah. The next day, I felt so emotional after it, which I do after most ultras anyway. But I think definitely one like that, where you've literally just been in a little bubble for 5 days with all these people that you didn't even know at the start and now are like best friends with completely. And then the next day I had to go for my x-ray to check that I did or didn't have a stress fracture, which I didn't, thankfully, in the end. But they told me to still have like 2 weeks of no running anyway, which I think normally I would hate, but it was actually it was actually quite nice for once, um, just to chill. And then yeah, after those 2 weeks, I started running again and was fine, just like really gentle, easy runs. But yeah, it's a lot to get over, and I think 2 weeks is pretty good going, to be fair.
Yeah, no, that's really good recovery. And talking about emotions at the end of races, I'm sure many people know exactly what we're talking about. But it's good. It's good to be emotional, and you were definitely emotional when we sort of met properly at the end of UTS as well. You were teary that day as well. So yeah, no, it's absolutely fine, Heidi. I think that's really good. I think it's good to really let that out at the end. And was Renee McGregor there with you?
She was, yeah.
What's she like?
She's amazing. She's so lovely and such a good runner as well. Yeah, she's really nice.
Yeah. Did you get much nutrition tips off her on the way around or not?
Yeah. Uh, we ran quite a few laps with her actually. There was me, her, and Lauren. We ended up realizing that we ran pretty much the same speed. Um, she might have took us the wrong way quite a few times from the area. Yeah, she did take us the wrong way a few times. But yeah, she's really great to speak to.
Yeah, I've never met her personally, but I've sat and listened to her a lot at the running show over the last few times the running show's been on. She's been a speaker there, and I've listened to a lot of what she said. And then, as a result of that, tried to follow any content that she is putting out there, and various podcasts and things that she's done. So, and yeah, I mean that that must have been great having her there, because hopefully that helped you round with nutrition as well. She told a story once actually about boiled sweets, about having like a boiled sweet to try and um don't quote me on this, I'll paraphrase what she said, but something about tricking the brain into thinking that you're releasing sugar in a certain way to give you energy.
Yeah,
And that's sort of stayed with me ever since she said that, because I love a boiled sweet. But I'm sure there was loads of little tips like that she gave you on the process, right?
and one that I actually used on the arc recently is putting gels like into my water because they're like blackcurrant flavored, literally tastes like Ribena, and I think otherwise I probably wouldn't take enough gels because I don't like them. I'd rather try and have something actual to eat, which I do normally anyway. But yeah, I think just to try and constantly have something going into you, having those carbs, that was definitely a good little tip that I'll always use.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool. So it sounds like an awesome experience. And then as a result of that, and you learnt more about the charity Big Moose, like, did you mentioned 27 marathons. So tell us a bit about that. How did that come about? What was the idea around that?
Um, at the at the end of the 250, I'd worked out that I was going to be on, I think, 20, 21, 22 marathons. I think it must have ended up being 22. And that I would have sort of another 5 marathons to go to make 27 marathons by my 27th birthday. I thought about it a little bit before I did my 250, and I thought, right, well, I'll be on 22 by the time I finish that, so I'll only have 5 to go. But then as I'm running 250, I'm like, is that actually quite a good idea to then try and run 5 marathons in December, a few weeks after you've just ran 250k? Probably not, but I did it anyway because, yeah, once I've got the idea in my head, that's it then. But yeah, 27 marathons for my 27th birthday to then try and keep raising money for big moves.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Congratulations on that. I like that. I like that idea of doing something around birthdays or numbers that are associated with you at the time. I think that's a really cool way of, keeping yourself going and setting targets, because running long all the time can be really bloody boring. And people, you need to be able to do boring or bored well, in your own head and with your music and your podcasts or whatever. I don't know if you agree with that, by the way.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes I will run with no headphones and just be out for hours and just keep myself distracted, clearly.
Yeah, no, and that obviously that was part of the intro, the idea of where you live and the sort of coastal paths that you're around, and the terrain that you're around. Anyone who's been to your part of the world, it will know that the coastal footpath is not a flat, nice footpath, and B, it kind of drops down and comes back up very suddenly in some places. How do you think that helps you with the sort of type of training you need to do for these long endurance events, or do you just find it very normal now?
I think that has definitely helped. I only moved here last April, so just coming up to a year now. And obviously, where I used to run before was pretty flat. Used to run up around Wales a little bit as well. Would go there, but compared to here, that is completely different. I think if I wasn't here, I don't know if I'd have signed up to all the ultras that I did last year, because I think I would have been like panicking that like, oh, I can't do that. I wouldn't be ready. Like, I'm not used to running that terrain. I'm not used to it being so much elevation. I think that would have put me off. So I think it's definitely helped, and it's definitely helped my running.
Yeah, no, I talk to many of you as someone that lives in Cambridge in the Fens that is flat as a pancake. When I talk to people like yourself and Ree on the previous episodes, and Charlie and the other guys that have been on, like, you guys will live in awesome places that there's just adventure it's in the back door. You sort of go out the back door and you're out there on the trail. And I think, it's not a green eye monster, it's not jealousy, but it's like, wow, you guys, you don't have to go looking for it. You can just go out for a run and you're getting some benefit on that sort of thing straight away. And I think, from my perspective, we have to travel to go and do anything that's of note, of any sort of hills, and they're pretty tame. They're in sort of North Hertfordshire, and that's the best we can get within sort of an hour's drive. So I'll be taking lots of little camping trips away to improve as I get back into my running. And when we travel down to Cornwall for holidays and things, it's certainly that part that you're in. I've ran a bit of that coastal path from Morganporth up towards Newquay, and it's a bit up and down. You go down into a couple of bays that are really quite steep, and if that's just on your day, your weekly 5K recovery run, that's very different to my flat run, for example, in the Fens. So I think the advantages are probably really good, and I sports science is my passion and my background, but actually living environment is going to help you, and it sounds like it has helped you a lot as well. So that's really cool. So November, before that, when we met at UTS, so Ultra Trail Snowdonia, it was the first year that that it had been taken over by UTMB as a series race. Did you go to that? Were you planning on going to that race before that announcement, or were you attracted to it because of that?
I can't remember when I first saw it. I'd been considering it for a couple of months. It definitely wasn't that it was all of a sudden like part of UTMB that made me want to sign up. I'd been considering it a little bit like in the couple of months just before it, and then very, very kindly got offered a place to be there. I think that was maybe just over a month before the race, maybe even a little bit less now. But yeah, not very long to train, but it's probably one of my favorite.
Do you know Mike Jones? Have you met him? No. So Mike did come on the podcast and told us all about the transition to UTMB and it becoming a World Series and stuff. And yeah, that day you did 50K, right? And how was it?
I loved it. The second half was brutal, very hard. my first climb up Snowdon, I was definitely struggling. I was thinking, oh my God, how am I going to finish this race? Nearly probably like 18 miles in. Not long after I just saw that first climb up Snowdon, I was just really hot all of a sudden. But then the weather as we're getting higher up was obviously getting quite bad, and it was starting to rain. So I was wanting to put on my coat, and I was feeling quite lightheaded. My legs were starting to hurt, and I was just thinking, oh my God, I've got another climb up Snowdon to do after this one. But then when I got to the top of Snowdon, knew where I was, knew the route, felt fine. And then, coming back up, I knew I just had to get back to the top of that Lamberis path. And then from there, I know I could just fly down that really easily. Because I've done a load of training runs running up and down Snowdon for sunrise and stuff before. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was amazing.
Yeah, no, that was the general feedback actually, that Clanberis like downward stretch back in apparently was absolutely awesome, and I'd hope to get to do it at some point. But it sounded what I didn't perhaps appreciate at the time was where I was standing. I was on the pretty much the halfway aid station with a media pass to be in there, and that gave me access to you guys, and we were chatting away. And anyone who listens to that episode in particular or watches it on YouTube, if you watch it on YouTube, you can see all your faces when we interview you, and you all look pretty happy considering you're halfway through an ultra in Snowdonia. But what I didn't appreciate was what was about to happen
Yeah.
behind us. And you're right, the weather came in, didn't it? The weather did come in a bit at that point. Yeah, and this idea of running up and down Snowdon twice just didn't quite register with me.
So second
Go
top,
on.
50k.
Yeah, and I think did you expect it to be that difficult?
I guess yes and no. I think maybe no more. So our first climb, I can never remember what the name of it is, but you're literally like 2-3 miles in, and it is so steep. And then you're thinking, oh my God, I've still got so many miles left to run. And knowing that I had to go up and down Snowdon twice, but I think you actually are going up and down Snowdon twice, you don't realise like how hard that actually is on your legs, especially on the ups.
Yeah, and I think it's been released that they've had to alter the route a little bit because I
Yeah.
think it was too hard for the 100k.
Yeah, I guess they've changed it now so it's more acceptable for the 50k, which I do think is amazing. And they took out this section where we had to like scramble coming off Watkins path to then back down. I really enjoyed. They gave you like a little bit of a break from climbing up so much. But yeah, I do think it's really good, and it's actually sold out.
Yeah, no, it's sold out really quick. Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make it this year to do a video, which is a real shame because I really enjoyed it. And from that, the new format with UTMB, get this, you now can put your name in the hat. Did you put your name in the hat?
No, the only reason I didn't is because, and I would love to try and run like the 50 or whatever K it is over there UTMB, but it clashes with festival season for me, which is a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, like if we're being honest, the reason we're not going this year is because I'm at one of my best friends from school's stag do. So that's that that other life, right? So there's Heidi the runner, and then you've got Heidi in Ibiza and everything else that anyone
Yeah,
who follows you on social media knows.
yeah,
Talk to me about that because I think they're two very different lives, and I certainly appreciate it, and I know I know there's two lives because
yeah.
that's me all over. But tell us about it from your perspective, like what you do and what you do. So you got running, and then you got the other side of things. So what are your other passions?
Yeah, festivals are definitely one of them. I always plan my year now and all my races around when Fields is, which is the bank holiday. I've been going there now 9 years. So that's definitely me going out, drinking, partying, festivals, definitely before I got into running. So yeah, now it's kind of like a bit of both. So last year I did like all my races, did loads in July, did UTS 50k, race to the Soap 100k, and then switched to other Heidi, went to Ibiza the week after, and then Creamfields in August. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. So I was away recently with a group of lads. None of them are real runners. We were going to visit a friend abroad, and what I realised, I was out running, and I managed to drag a couple of them out each morning, and I was out running, and I had a great experience of Paphos and Limassol and the Cypriot towns that we were in, because I was out there running in the mornings, and I got to see like a different perspective. And then when we were out having like beers and stuff in the afternoon, watching the footy on the telly and whatever, what I realised is that they can't do the other bit that I do because they don't do it and they don't train. And I felt, not in a sorry way for them, but I felt like they were missing out on something
Yeah.
because they didn't see the run and the adventure that I had running from the mountains down to the coast, for example. Do you have friends that obviously in the other part of your life that don't really understand what it is you do or
Yeah.
don't appreciate it?
Yeah. I think my family mostly definitely do not understand what I do. Especially if you've seen my mum's comments recently, that she didn't want to watch me run in the arc, didn't want to track me because it was so close to the cliffs. And I was like, that is the whole of that is the whole of my race. Yeah, I think unless you're in it though, you can't really like appreciate how much we actually do, or like why we actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. And this sentence that I always say to everyone that I speak to, running has taken me now to places that I don't think I would have otherwise gone to.
Yeah.
You know, my other life wouldn't allow me to go to those places probably. So, and I really like that, and it's really cool. And my dad personally got to experience that a little bit himself by coming and watching me do some of the Ironman stuff that I did a few years back. Because I'm not sure we'd have ever gone to the national park down at, Exmoor National Park and gone to Wimbleball Lake. We'd have never gone there. And these are places in the UK that are really beautiful that people don't really know about unless you do this sort of thing. And now that I've seen them, I feel like I would be missing out. But then I guess if I didn't know, it wouldn't matter, right?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it, when you start thinking about things like that. I don't think I'd have been to like any of the places, or even maybe even been living in Cornwall, like if I didn't run. Like it's just weird the way things then like follow up.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do for a day job?
I'm a vet nurse.
Right. Okay. And did your job take you down to Cornwall, or did you just decide to go to Cornwall?
I pretty much just decided to come to Cornwall. I was actually around this time last year just looking for a new job. Had looked at one up in the Lake District. Wanted to be Decided that I just wanted to be somewhere that I would love, as well as like being able to then have the job there and things like that. So looked at things like the Lake District so I could go running, somewhere to have my horse, like close to the beach, things like that. Didn't like the one that I went to in the Lake District. So thought I was coming to Newquay in this time like sort of last year anyway. So I thought, oh, I'll just see if there's anything around. Um Found one, decided to just go for the interview, and yeah, just absolutely fell in love with it.
That's awesome. It's a good story. It's a nice story. And you get your party season in Newquay, right, each year?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's wicked. So let's go into the beginning of 2023. And you've already ticked yourself off a massive race in 2023, the Arc of Attrition. Talk to me about that, as a race, but firstly, just elaborate on it being local or like compared to most people, you are there.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us all about it.
I did the 50 miler, definitely not the 100 miler just yet. Yeah, having it here, literally like on the coast path, and being able to just go down and like recce sections of it as well. I don't know if I'd have like wanted to do this race if I did still live back on the Wirral, which is completely flat. Like I think I'd have really struggled to go into something like that. Definitely noticed the difference on race day as well. I've struggled a little bit nutrition wise. I didn't fuel properly, but I think my legs overall actually felt okay, and that's obviously got to be just from being so used to training on the coast path.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely agree. And 50 miles round the coastal path,
Yeah.
because of the time of year, there's not loads of daylight there. How did it differ between night and day for you?
Yeah, I was really worried about the night sections. I haven't really done much night running. Yes, I've done some like when I've been training, like back home. I used to live on the Wirral, and I've done a few runs around here, but I'm not normally running out on the coast path in the pitch black. So yeah, I was worried about how that was going to be, but it was actually fine. I think because you've got so many of the other runners around, and it's ultra running, so everyone's always looking out for each other anyway. Yeah, it was fine. It was actually so much better than I thought it was going to be. There was loads of people asking how you were, and by that point, I was definitely distracted about feeling sick instead. But yeah, much better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question about what, proximity wise, did you feel like there were other runners around you?
Yeah.
Or was it quite lonely in sections?
No, there was always pretty much someone around. So either people on the 50, or we'd also sort of caught up with some of the 100 runners by that point as well. So yeah, there was pretty much always someone around. And coming up to the last section into Porth Tower, and there's obviously loads of the archangels and things showing you which is so nice.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And am I right in saying that the 50 is the second half
Yes.
of the 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean that's a cool concept as well, and they obviously, they've obviously designed it in that way to potentially allow for crossovers and things like that to happen anyway. So that's really cool. And in terms of recovery from that and stuff, that will go all right.
Yeah, pretty okay actually. A couple of like little niggles and things. The bottom of my foot was a little bit sore on like one of my first runs back, but been for another run since. Yeah, all fine. Ready to ready to get training again.
Awesome. And what is it you're training for next?
I'm hoping that I'm gonna be back at UTS this year. Hopefully gonna try the 100k. And then other than that, we'll be running the other sort of mud crew races, 45, I think miles it is in April. And then I think I'm going to try the 63 miler on the coast path in August.
Nice,
All
nice.
races.
No, cool. Good luck with those, and I'll definitely be following it myself and see how you get on. In terms of some 3 quick fire questions, so who would you like to meet in person in the ultra world that you haven't yet met, just to have a chat with? Think about that for a second. I'll ask you the other questions. What would you say your bucket list race is, if you've got one? You don't have to have one, but if you've got one, and then you are someone that went from not really liking running to becoming an ultra runner. So what would, is there anything you would say to anyone who was kind of considering getting into ultra running but can't quite make the jump to go into ultra running? So let's go to the first one. Is there anyone you'd like to meet that you haven't yet met or have a chat with?
God, I don't know. I just think like watching so many people on it, just on Instagram, like so many ultra runners. There's just so many people that are like amazing at this. Don't know if I have anyone like in particular, but yeah, just seeing all people like even at the Arc. One of my like main worries, or what made me nervous, was like how many like really 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 good level runners were going to be running that, and just to see like how people are at the top of these races.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no, just to elaborate on that, actually, you bring up a good point. When myself and some of the guys from my running club, when we first did ultras quite a while ago, we 2014 and then 15, 16, 17 was when we sort of really got into it. We just naively thought we were special. And then what we realized is what we did didn't even scratch the surface. It
No.
didn't even scratch the surface of what people were actually doing and what they actually achieve. And, you look like you're on a journey that is doing those races that I look at and go, wow, that's amazing. Imagine doing the Arc of Attrition. Imagine, like you say, those people that turned up there on the start line of both the 100 and the 50. It could be intimidating, right?
Yeah, I think it definitely did feel it. especially maybe more so if you watch the 100, but even in the 50, yeah, there's like some incredible ultra. I was just kind of thinking like, God, like just little me, like going out and running it as well. But yeah, it's still an experience them.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So do you follow Ali from Ali Bailey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just through my sister-in-law, they used to work together. So and my sister-in-law goes, "Oh, you should follow this girl." This was years ago. Follow Ali. She da 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 da. And then I met Ali at an ultra up in Yorkshire, and she goes, "Oh," I go, "Oh, Ali Bailey," and she goes, "Oh, another Instagram fan." And she, bless her, she had great humour with it. And I said, "Oh no, 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 I'm such and such's uh, brother-in-law, da 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 da," and she's like, "Oh wow, did it?" And then now we sort of loosely say hello, but I don't think she really knows who I am. But when you see those guys, like that circle of runners, they're very inspiring, but also it does for me, it can bring that intimidation factor. You go, "Oh God, they're here, they're on this start line. What does that mean? Does that mean I can't do this?" Like, and there is that factor, but I'm sure they wouldn't want to feel that they make people feel that way, and they probably don't, but they're very inspiring and they're very normal people, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, I find them to be normal. Don't know
Yeah.
what your experience is, and people put people on pedestals, but in the ultra world, I feel like no matter who you are, you can share the start line with these people, and you wouldn't feel like you were around an elite sportsman or sportswoman. You wouldn't feel that.
No, I think that's why ultra running is definitely different to marathon running. I think if you were at the start line of a marathon in that same situation, it would be so different. But at an ultra, like, yeah, I think it's definitely, you notice that difference. Everyone is definitely a lot more friendly, even though these people are running them so well, and like the times they are running them in, and just, yeah, it's just insane. But yeah, it would still feel so normal, and like would probably still speak to you like exactly the same as everyone else would on the race.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I love that. I love that about the whole community of it. And that's what attracts me to be part of it. And this whole podcast came about because of that. I couldn't run. I was injured for 2 years. I couldn't do it. And I thought, how the hell can I do ultra running? So I created the podcast and thought, why not? Everyone's doing a podcast. Let's do it. And now you get to meet people like yourself and chat to people all over the country, all over the world even. And it's amazing that we all share this feeling of community with these other runners. And, you know, it sounds like your answer is going to be yes, but I won't pre-frame it. I'm more likely to get support from you guys on Instagram about what I'm doing in my training and my running than I'm going to get from my local friends that I've been friends with for years and years and years, or from my family.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, complete strangers are supporting us, really.
Yeah.
And that is what I love about our ultra running community. And I think people, hopefully people get that from other hobbies as well. But for us, for me, it's all about that. So yeah, no, love it. And then that second question, bucket list race, anything that stands out?
Um, I think obviously I would love to end up going to UTMB at some point. Other than that, maybe not bucket list, but there's always just little races they're not little at all. There's always races that you want to do along the way. I really want to try and get to Ultra Trail Australia and do the 100k there at some point. And I think maybe one day I would love to try and do Western States as well.
Yeah, Western States. A lot of my experience of ultra in terms of my knowledge has come from YouTube. Um, Sitting and watching the documentaries on YouTube, Billy Yang films and Ethan Newbury and all of those guys, watching all those films, and they're really good. And it just makes me want to go and do Western States. Um, the truth is I'm probably not cut out for Western States anywhere near yet in terms of experience and stuff, but it's definitely a bucket list for me. So yeah, no, we share that. And yeah, no, cool. I like, like you said, nothing's going to be short in our world, but I think there are a lot of unique races. So even if they're not the world famous ones, there are things that people want to do, right? And they want to really get used to, like, this idea of going and trying different different areas and different races. So, yeah, no, cool. And then just if you can, anything that you would say to that person who is on the fence right now about they're thinking about dipping their toe, but they don't know whether they should do. What would you say to someone in that position?
I am always going to obviously say to just, absolutely go for it. I think once you start getting into it, even if you just sign up to a 50K, if you've ran a marathon or even like half marathon, like a 50K is achievable to pretty much anybody. And like you will then notice running that you actually can run it, and it's a lot more chilled than you'd expect it to be. Whereas I think people think because marathon running is so hard, the training is so hard, and it's so like time focused that they're like, oh, I couldn't run an ultra. But it's just completely different. Like everyone's just really friendly, supportive, chilled. No one cares how fast or slow you've ran it, just that you've ran it. I think everyone should try and have a little go at least just once, and then you'll probably get addicted.
Yeah, no, cool. That's cool. That's really cool. Good bit of advice that as well. Wicked. So, Heidi, thanks very much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you again and to hear your stories and thoughts on things. So, thanks very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So then, guys, hopefully you enjoyed what Heidi had to say. And there's a lot of information in there that I think people can relate to if they've been through the journey. So if you do know anyone who wants to get into ultra running, do be sure to share this with them. If anyone who's listened or watched this, whichever platform you're on, could remember to like, leave a comment, ask us any questions in the comment for future episodes. As we get the guests coming in, we'll try and give you a heads up if anyone's coming on, and you can maybe ask them specific questions for them. So do drop anything you can in the comments, and we appreciate any shares that you can give us. But for today, we just want to say thanks for listening, thanks for coming, and let's hope we can meet here again to discuss more on the Ultra Running Podcast.